Chapter 11 of She and Allan. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. She and Allan by H. Rider Haggard. Chapter 11. Through the Mountain Wall. "These do not seem to be friends of yours," I said, pointing to the fallen. "And yet," I added, nodding toward the spearmen who were now emerging from the gully, "they are very like your friends." "Puppies from the same litter are often alike, yet when they grow up sometimes they fight each other," replied Father Christmas blandly. "At least these come to save and not to kill you. Look, they kill the others," and he pointed to them, making an end of some of the wounded men. "But who are these?" and he glanced with evident astonishment first at the fearsome looking Umslopogaas and then at the grotesque Hans. "Nay, answer not, you must be weary and need rest. Afterwards we can talk." "Well, as a matter of fact we have not yet breakfasted," I replied. "Also I have business to attend to here," and I glanced at our wounded. The old fellow nodded and went to speak to the captain of his force, doubtless as to the pursuit of the enemy, for presently I saw a company spring forward on their tracks. Then, assisted by Hans and the remaining Zulus, of whom one was Goroko, I turned to attend to our own people. The task proved lighter than I expected, since the badly injured man was dead or dying, and the hurts of the two others were in their legs and comparatively slight, such as Goroko could doctor in his own native fashion. After this, taking Hans to guard my back, I went down to the stream and washed myself. Then I returned and ate, wondering the while that I could do so with appetite after the terrible dangers which we had passed. Still, we had passed them, and Robertson, Umslopogaas, with 3 of his men, I and Hans were quite unharmed, a fact for which I returned thanks in silence but sincerely enough to Providence. Hans also returned thanks in his own fashion after he had filled himself, not before, and lit his corn pipe. But Robertson made no remark. Indeed, when he had satisfied his natural cravings, he rose and walking a few paces forward, stood staring at the cleft in the mountain cliff into which we had seen the litter vanish that bore his daughter to some fate unknown. Even the great fight that we had fought and the victory we had won against overpowering odds did not appear to impress him. He only glared at the mountain, into the heart of which Inez had been raped away, and shook his fist. Since she was gone all else went for nothing, so much so that he did not offer to assist with the wounded Zulus or show curiosity about the strange old man by whom he had been rescued. "The Great Medicine, Baas," said Hans in a bewildered way, "is even more powerful than I thought. Not only has it brought us safely through the fighting and without a scratch, for those Zulus there do not matter, and there will be less cooking for me to do now that they are gone. It has also brought down your reverend father the Predikant from the place of fires in heaven, somewhat changed from what I remember him, it is true, but still without doubt the same. When I make my report to him presently, if he can understand my talk, I shall—" "Stop your infernal nonsense, you son of a donkey," I broke in, for at this moment old Father Christmas, smiling more benignly than before, reappeared from the kloof into which he had vanished and advanced towards us bowing with much politeness. Having seated himself upon the little wall that we had built up, he contemplated us, stroking his beautiful white beard, then said, addressing me, "Of a certainty you should be proud who with a few have defeated so many. Still, had I not been ordered to come at speed, I think that by now you would have been as those are." and he looked towards the dead Zulus who were laid out at a distance like men asleep, while their companions sought for a place to bury them. "Ordered by whom?" I asked. "There is only one who can order," he answered with mild astonishment. "She who commands, she who is everlasting." It occurred to me that this must be some Arabic idiom for the eternal feminine, but I only looked vague and said, "It would appear that there are some whom this exalted everlasting She cannot command, those who attacked us, also those who have fled away yonder," and I waved my hands towards the mountain. "No command is absolute. In every country there are rebels, even as I have heard in heaven above us. But, Wanderer, what is your name?" "Watcher by Night," I answered. "Ah, a good name for one who must have watched well by night and by day too, to reach this country, living where She who commands says that no man of your colour has set foot for many generations. Indeed, I think she told me once that 2000 years had gone by since she spoke to a white man in the city of Kôr." "Did she indeed?" I exclaimed, stifling a cough. "You do not believe me?" he went on smiling. "Well, She who commands can explain matters for herself better than I who was not alive 2000 years ago, so far as I remember. But what must I call him with the axe?" "Warrior is his name." "Again a good name, as to judge by the wounds on them. Certain of those rebels I think are now telling each other in hell. And this man, if indeed he be a man," he added, looking doubtfully at Hans. "Light in Darkness is his name." "I see. Doubtless because his colour is that of the winter sun in thick fog, or a bad egg broken into milk. And the other white man, who mutters and whose brow is like a storm?" "He is called Avenger. You will learn why later on," I answered impatiently, for I grew tired of this catechism, adding, "And what are you called, and, if you are pleased to tell it to us, upon what errand do you visit us in so fortunate an hour?" "I am Billali," he answered, "the servant and messenger of She who commands, and I was sent to save you and to bring you safely to her." "How can this be, Billali, seeing that none knew of our coming?" "Yet She who commands knew," he said with a benignant smile. "Indeed, I think that she learned of it some moons ago through a message that was sent to her, and so arranged all things that you should be guided safely to her secret home, since otherwise how would you have passed a great pathless swamp with the loss, I think she said, of but one man whom a snake bit?" Now I stared at the old fellow, for how could he know of the death of this man? But thought it useless to pursue the conversation further. "When you are rested and ready," he went on, "we will start. Meanwhile I leave you that I may prepare litters to carry those wounded men, and you also, Watcher by Night, if you wish." Then with a dignified bow, for everything about this old fellow was stately, he turned and vanished into the kloof. The next hour or so was occupied in the burial of the dead Zulus, a ceremony in which I took no part beyond standing up and raising my hat as they were borne away, for, as I have said somewhere, it is best to leave natives alone on these occasions. Indeed, I lay down, reflecting that strangely enough there seemed to be something in old Zikali's tale of a wonderful white queen who lived in a mountain fastness, since there was the mountain as he had drawn it on the ashes, and the servants of that queen who, apparently, had knowledge of our coming, appeared in the nick of time to rescue us from one of the tightest fixes in which I ever found myself. Moreover, the antique and courteous individual called Billali spoke of her as She who is everlasting. What the deuce could he mean by that, I wondered. Probably that she was very old and therefore disagreeable to look on, which I confessed to myself would be a disappointment. And how did she know that we were coming? I could not guess.